When you talk to an AI chatbot, it might feel like that conversation is happening in a bubble, just you and your screen. But it's not necessarily as simple or as private as that. And now, some chatbot users are facing the possibility of their chats being used against them in court. How does this work legally? What responsibility do AI companies have if their users discuss criminal actions with chatbots? And what does all of this mean for the future of how we engage with this technology? Here to talk about this with me is CNN Digital senior writer Eric Levinson. Eric has covered many of the country's biggest criminal trials, including cases against Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. And now he's following several cases that are the first of their kind. Cases seeking to use AI conversations and content as evidence. This is Terms of Service. I'm CNN tech reporter Claire Duffy. My conversation with Eric after this short break. Eric Levinson, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I just want to start by sort of setting an overview here of what we're going to be talking about. How have we seen chatbot conversations playing into criminal investigations, other court proceedings?
We've seen a few big cases recently, and the one a couple weeks ago out of University of South Florida, there was 2 graduate students who went missing. They ultimately arrested the roommate for first-degree murder of both of them, and part of the evidence in the case was this person had been sending messages to ChatGPT asking, what happens if a human is put in a garbage bag? And the 2 victims were later believed to be found in garbage bags. They're still fully investigating the identities of those. But so there's the question of that evidence is very clearly connected to this crime. There's other cases where ChatGPT messages and conversations have helped show the mindset of certain people. So there was the case last year out of the big Palisades fire in LA that destroyed a lot of LA and the Pacific Palisades. They arrested a suspect who had been at a mountaintop nearby on New Year's Eve, like a week before, and had messaged ChatGPT about his interest in fire and what happens if a cigarette lights a fire. And so that was used as part of the evidence accusing him of arson.
Recently, the judge in this LA fire case actually barred prosecutors from introducing some of the ChatGPT evidence. AI-generated images of a city burning that prosecutors said the suspect had created several months before the fire. The suspect, Jonathan Rinderknecht, has pleaded not guilty, and his lawyer had argued that the images were prejudicial and taken out of context. Still, the question of how chatbot conversations will be used in other cases remains.
It's still in its early stages, but we're seeing more and more that ChatGPT conversations are just evidence. Like, they can be used for you, they can be used against you. And so in the same way text or Google searches can be used, so can these conversations with AI.
Interesting. And I was going to ask what kinds of questions people are asking. It sounds like a lot of sort of, how do I get away with this thing? Or what will happen to me if I do this thing?
There's some disturbing ones. The other big criminal case that we've looked at is the 2024. There was a murder in Virginia where a suspect before a shooting asked Snapchat's AI. So I didn't totally realize Snapchat had an AI, but asked, I'm about to get in a fight. Like, what are my rules around self-defense? And so he later shot someone and claimed self-defense. And the prosecutor said, how can this be self-defense? You asked AI beforehand.
Right. You knew this was going to happen.
Yeah. So there was a question of premeditation. And so all these things can be used in criminal cases, but they can also be used in civil cases. I talked to an estate attorney who works on probate law and estate law. And, if your will, anything you send to ChatGPT about your will, or anything you send about your wife or your child, that could be used in a divorce or a custody case. If you're in a car crash and you ask ChatGPT who was in the right, who was in the wrong, that could be part of an insurance claim. So all these things, it's just evidence that could be used in any different legal situation.
Why do you think people have an expectation of privacy when they're talking with chatbots?
It's a good question. I think chatbots have a way of soliciting information and they feel private in some ways. I've used ChatGPT and, you can ask it, how can I respond to this text message that's uncomfortable? Or how can I write an email to my boss that's like a tricky email to write? And it's pretty helpful for doing that kind of stuff, but it's not private. And so it's almost like writing in your diary, but if your diary could then be used, in a court of law.
Right. Which it can, right? Your diary could, if somebody knew you had it and found it.
Certainly many manifestos have been part of court cases. I think that there was a quote from Sam Altman, who was speaking to the comedian Theo Vaughn, kind of an interesting pairing of the two of them. And Sam Altman said, People tell ChatGPT the most personal shit in their lives.
People talk about the most personal shit in their lives to ChatGPT. It's, people use it, young people especially, like use it as a therapist, a life coach, having these relationship problems. What should I do? And right now, if you talk to a therapist or a lawyer or a doctor about those problems, there's like legal privilege for it. There's doctor-patient confidentiality, there's legal confidentiality, whatever. And we haven't figured that out yet for when you talk to ChatGPT. So if you go talk to ChatGPT about your most sensitive stuff and then there's like a lawsuit or whatever, like we could be required to produce that. And I think that's very screwed up.
The legal expert we talked to said it's a treasure trove or a gold mine for investigators, because you can get people's mindset. You can hear what they're thinking and what they're learning about their case and why they're thinking it and why they're sending messages about that stuff. So you can kind of get in their heads a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Chatbots are designed to respond to you as if it is human. They're very empathetic, and some people say they're sycophantic, but in many ways, it is this tricky thing where it talks to you like it's a human, and yet it's not a human, so it's not going to judge you. It's almost like you might open up to it even more than if you were talking to a friend or something.
Yeah, and you can say, pretend to be a doctor, and then you can say, my left hip hurts, like, what does this mean? Or, pretend to be a lawyer. What can I do with this case?
Right.
And it will say, for sure, I'll pretend to be your lawyer, but it's not. It's not a lawyer. It's not a doctor. And it's not a psychiatrist. There's a lot of therapy is probably the biggest one that people use it for, and it's really not a therapist. Super not a therapist.
It also strikes me that it's just so new. Like everybody has kind of gotten used to the idea because there have been lots of cases that your Google searches can be used against you, or your phone location can be used to place you at the scene of a crime. But people just aren't used to how AI can be used in this context.
Yeah, you're right. It's a new form, but it's not necessarily a new idea that your messages or your texts can be used against you. We had a case a couple years ago out of Massachusetts where a husband was accused of killing his wife. And part of the evidence against him was his Google searches, which started off as like, how do I get divorced? And then the next was like, how to dispose of a body, how long does a body, when does it start to smell, things like that, like very gruesome Google searches. And that was used against him, and he was convicted of murder. So it's not just that AI is new, it's kind of an extension of your text messages, your call logs, your credit card information, all this tech evidence.
Like footprint that we create.
Exactly. Yeah. And for lawyers, there's not, I think Sam Altman and other tech people have said we should create privacy around this, which I think for them makes some sense. If you're talking to an AI like a doctor or a lawyer, there should be some privacy around that. But it's not really, for lawyers, that's not really the case. Like they don't really see it that way. It's just evidence for them.
According to the legal experts that you've been talking with, why isn't a conversation with a chatbot privileged in the way that a conversation with a doctor or a lawyer is, especially if you're going to the chatbot and saying, pretend that you're a doctor?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest reason is it's not recognized as a lawyer, a doctor, or a therapist. There's state rules around that. And it's not really clear where they're getting their information from, or if it's legitimate. And then there's also a lot of the origins of, patient-doctor confidentiality. That comes from like the Hippocratic Oath, right? Attorney-client privilege comes from like the 1700s. It's like part of common law. So these are really well-established older things for the professional fields of being a doctor, being a lawyer. AI is like, it's not a person. Doesn't have a legal licensing or anything.
Right, it just isn't that thing.
It just doesn't really make sense in that way.
In fact, the chatbot company Character AI was actually sued by the Pennsylvania governor's office for allegedly presenting itself as a licensed medical professional in violation of state law. The lawsuit alleges that a Character AI chatbot falsely claimed to be a psychiatrist with training and a license. In response, a Character AI spokesperson said its bots are, quote, fictional and intended for entertainment and role-playing, and that they include disclosures noting that users are talking with AI.
Now, some tech people, I spoke to Niels Gilman with this think tank who said, if you're treating AI like a therapist, like a doctor, like a lawyer, the reason we have these protection laws is to get people to open up a little bit and to kind of create a bubble around them so that they can speak freely. That's part of the argument, but that's not the full thing. So some lawyers pushed back against that and thought that wasn't significant.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the reaction from folks like Sam Altman, the tech community, to these AI conversations being used in court proceedings.
Yeah. So Sam Altman has spoken in that Theo Von interview. He said,
Which, if people haven't listened to, they should listen to, because it's just fascinating hearing comedian Theo Von talking to OpenAI CEO Sam Altman.
Sam Altman says to Theo, like, do you use AI? And he's like, not really, because I'm nervous about privacy. And Sam Altman says, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because this is a big issue for them. They have this tricky balance between, they're encouraging people to use these AI bots for everything, literally everything. Take control of your life with AI, but it's all can be used in court cases. It can all be used. And so I think Sam Altman has said he's very concerned. It's a huge issue for them. How do you get people to trust this privacy, even though the government can get access to it through a subpoena or through a legal recourse?
Yeah, that was my next question. How are police or law enforcement or just the other side in a legal dispute actually getting a hold of these conversations?
Yeah, so this is just a general subpoena power. So it's kind of a fancy term, but when there's an investigation, prosecutors can file a legal document that requires you to give all your information or your text messages, and not all of your information. It's usually limited in scope, but any text messages you have about, this crime or in this time period, they can limit it in certain ways. And that's both for crime investigations, but it's also in a custody case or a divorce case, a lawyer can request that information from the other side. Even in the small claims court, you can have some subpoena stuff. So,
and you're compelled to hand them over.
Yes, you be served a subpoena that it has the power of the court and the power of the state behind it.
Have AI conversations been used in cases where there have actually been convictions at this point?
Just the Snapchat 2024 murder case. From my understanding, there's only been a few big high-profile criminal cases. The Virginia murder, the arson case out of LA, that goes to trial next month.
And it's a jury trial. So
it's a jury trial, it's an arson, and it could be pretty significant time in prison if he's convicted. So it's going to be an interesting case, yeah.
That's going to be really fascinating, too, as we see more of these cases go to court. Just because, especially in jury trials, because people have such strong feelings about AI generally, it's going to be really interesting to see how juries evaluate, what does it say about this person that they were using AI, and what do I think of the AI's response? That's going to be really fascinating.
Yeah, I suppose that's the meta argument too. Is this person normal or weird for using AI? And then there's just what it tells the AI, what they are saying to the AI.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of what the AI tells the person.
Yes, which I want to get to. Are we seeing the AI platforms or companies be held accountable for their role in any of this criminal action? The fact that the AI talked back.
We've seen a couple instances of prosecutors or officials being skeptical of AI and looking closer into them. The biggest one in Florida right now. So there was a Florida State University shooting, and the Florida Attorney General is investigating OpenAI because they allege that this shooter got significant advice in carrying out the shooting from ChatGPT. So we haven't seen the full evidence of that, but they're investigating OpenAI.
Criminally, right? That's huge.
I believe so,
If they were
yeah.
going to be potentially held accountable criminally for the conversations that their chatbot engaged in.
That would be a big deal, yeah.
An OpenAI spokesperson called the FSU shooting a tragedy, but said, quote, ChatGPT is not responsible for this terrible crime. The company said it shared the account believed to be linked to the attacker with law enforcement after the shooting, and that the ChatGPT conversations included, quote, information that could be found broadly across public sources on the internet.
The other case, which you've covered, is out of Canada. There was a Canada school shooting, and there was questions of the shooter using AI, and was he allowed to? Should they have reported it to police? That's a civil lawsuit right now, but this is all coming together where, and you can hear it in Sam Altman's interview with our friend Theo Von, it's a big problem for them. And they have to balance this need for privacy with some pretty sharp questions from investigators and prosecutors about what they're telling people.
Right. Yeah, that case out of Canada, Tumbler Ridge, Canada, there was the worst mass school shooting in years in Canada. 5 children and a teacher were killed. One other child has been in the hospital for 2 months fighting skull and brain injuries. And families have now sued OpenAI, saying the shooter who was killed in this incident or killed themselves the shooter had conversations with ChatGPT that depicted violent scenarios. OpenAI's own systems actually suspended this person's account. Human reviewers who worked at OpenAI recommended going to police and warning them that this person was having these kinds of conversations. Ultimately, OpenAI's leadership decided not to do that. And then this incident takes place. So the families claim that OpenAI should have done more. They should have warned police. They should have not allowed this person to be discussing violent scenarios in the first place. But it is, I think, going to be very interesting to watch how the sort of legal precedent on this plays out and whether these AI companies can actually be held accountable.
Yeah, and OpenAI put out a big statement a couple days ago, I think in part response to my story, but also other stories similarly, just about their balance. It was a long statement that the essence was, we have to balance privacy of the people with the need for safety. And it's a tricky balance that we haven't seen that they've come to a proper equilibrium yet there.
Right. In response to the Tumblr Ridge lawsuits, an OpenAI spokesperson told me the company has a zero-tolerance policy for using our tools to assist in committing violence. They said the company has strengthened its safeguards around how ChatGPT responds to signs of distress or threats of violence. But Sam Altman also apologized to the community for not alerting law enforcement to the account. When we come back, can the AI companies be held accountable for what their chatbots tell users? And what do you need to know if you're an AI chatbot user about how your conversations could be used in court, for example, in a divorce or custody case? We'll be right back. What do prosecutors or like the Florida Attorney General who's doing this criminal investigation of OpenAI, what do they hope is going to change if these efforts to hold the companies accountable are successful?
I think the idea is to ensure that ChatGPT is giving advice that is not dangerous and causing or helping facilitate murder. I mean, that's a pretty low bar, I feel like. And then there's the question, if you go deeper into it, that's just for mass shootings. Obviously, it shouldn't support mass shootings. But the question more of, there's been a handful of mental health issues and suicides. I'm not sure what ChatGPT's responsibility is in those cases. Obviously, there's a couple of big lawsuits that you've covered. But it's a big question of what is this chatbot? Because it is just a robot saying words back to you. It's not a person.
Right.
How responsible can these words be and the company be for what it's telling people?
Right. Yeah, I think in many cases, whether it's families who have filed these lawsuits over this mass shooting in Canada or the suicide incidents, or the Florida AG, I think in many cases they would like the company to take more accountability for the responses of their chatbots. And of course, it's not just OpenAI. Other companies have been sort of in similar situations, but whether that is kicking people off the platform faster, not allowing them to have these kinds of conversations, directing people to human experts or support resources, or alerting police in these situations where they're concerned somebody could hurt themselves or other people. Obviously, that is like, in many ways, kind of a business consideration that these companies have to make, because the more you have these public incidents of company X has to call the police because their user was doing something dangerous, that doesn't reflect super great on that company in terms of what people are allowed to talk about. But maybe it also does because the company is being proactive. I don't know.
It's a good question. And at the end of the day, businesses are businesses. So they kind of move as they have to. Yeah.
So, obviously there's this debate in terms of how different sides think this should be handled, whether these chats should be able to be used in court, how companies seem to think there needs to be more privacy protections here. What do lawyers think? I would imagine that they would think this was great because it's more evidence that they can use.
Lawyers do not feel like there should be any privilege. They don't think this is it's a new field, but it's not different than any other evidence. So Google searches have been evidence, texts are evidence, your phone call logs are evidence. That's kind of the world of tech, is that it's all, your digital footprint is really widespread nowadays. So the lawyers I spoke to did not seem to think that there should be any legal protections for AI. They think it's kind of a silly argument to make because it's just not, there's no privilege for that. And there was a big case a couple months ago, an appeals case, where this man was arrested for a white-collar crime, I think it was fraud, and he went to ChatGPT and said, make me a legal defense strategy, here's the circumstances of my case. And ChatGPT made a nice document of his strategy, and then he gave it to his lawyer, And the prosecutors subpoenaed that legal document that ChatGPT made. And the defendant said, oh, it's actually legal privilege. I gave it to my lawyer. It's a law strategy. But they said, no, you asked AI for this. You didn't ask your lawyer for this. You asked AI. So we can have access to what AI told you. And the New York Federal Appeals Court ruled that, yeah, they agreed with the prosecutors. And so now the prosecutors have access to this person's legal strategy.
Whole defense strategy.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that the lawyers I spoke to said, be very careful about what you post to ChatGPT related to any criminal issues, related to any employment law, related to any divorce or custody, all these different cases. You should be very careful about what you message them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what this means for everyday people because, thankfully, most of us are not going to be asking ChatGPT how to hide a body, but people may be going through divorce cases or custody cases. What do people need to know, everyday people, about how their chats could be used in this way?
They need to know that it's just accessible. It's not private. So it might feel private, like it's just, you talking in confidence to someone, but there is a record of it. And so if you're asking ChatGPT for, things about your will, things about your family, your kids, your partners, that can be used as part of a court case. And as one legal expert said, anything you send to ChatGPT can be on the front page of CNN.
Yeah.
Scary to think about.
Yeah.
Now, will be different questions, but
right.
It can be accessible in a legal case. Yeah.
Is there any way at this point to try to have more private conversations to try to protect your privacy if you're engaging with AI?
I'm not sure right now. I think if you talk in person, that's probably the best way to do it.
Talk to a person
talk
in
to
person.
a person in person in the air. This is, why all those mob bosses are always saying, call me. Yeah, don't take notes on the criminal. What's that line in The Wire where they say, are you taking notes on a criminal conspiracy? It's like, don't take notes, just talk about it.
Talk to a person.
Now, obviously, we do not support
no, of course, but I think as we're talking about, folks who might be looking for support for relationship issues.
Yeah, I think just in terms of legal advice, talk to a friend, talk to a family, talk to a therapist,
talk to a doctor.
And ChatGPT is helpful for many things, and I think there's a lot of room for it to give advice or to help create documents, whatever it may be, but just be careful about what you're sending it.
Yeah. Do you think that these high-profile cases will change the way that people think about this, will change the expectation of privacy when they're engaging with AI?
I think certainly personally, I'm a little more wary. So the more this gets out, I think people should be wary of using it for everything.
Awesome. Well, Eric, this was so great. Thank you so much. I think this is really important for people to be aware of, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
It's important to remember that AI chatbots are not human, although they may have a warm or human-like response. They aren't bound by things like HIPAA or attorney-client privilege. And while tech executives have alluded to looking for ways around that, there currently aren't any rules that would prevent the use of chatbot conversations in court. As more of these cases go to trial, we'll learn more about how AI chats will be considered and used in criminal proceedings. But for now, keep in mind, even if you don't think you're doing anything wrong or illegal, chatbot conversations can be subpoenaed and used in court for all sorts of cases. If you need advice about something sensitive, like health or relationship issues, it's still best to go to a human professional if you can, for so many reasons. Thanks so much to Eric Levinson for joining us. That's it for this week's episode of Terms of Service. I'm Claire Duffy. Talk to you next week.